Good morning. Pleased to be joined with Vice Chair Lieu this morning. George Santos might be gone, but make no mistake, the extreme MAGA Republicans are still running the House of Representatives. Some, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, are even taking credit for getting Speaker Johnson to flip-flop on impeachment. Because of her, we will spend more floor time on baseless accusations and political gamesmanship instead of voting to lower costs or fund vital services that everyday Americans rely on. And some within the pro-Putin caucus on the House Republican side are sabotaging America's efforts to fund Ukraine's war effort as it defends its country against Putin's illegal invasion. Democracy and American leadership are on the line, but these Republicans would rather weaken President Biden for short-term political gain than ensure that our nation remains the leader in the free world. As the economy continues to grow stronger, MAGA Republicans want to undermine that progress by slashing Social Security and Medicare, rewarding billionaires who cheat on their taxes, and ending clean energy jobs. With another government funding deadline looming in 6 weeks, the chaos that the American people have been subjected to isn't going to let up. After watching House Republicans drag our country to the brink of default, nearly shut down the government twice, and oust their own speaker, we've seen that this is just who Republicans are. They can't be trusted to lead. With that, I'll turn it over to Vice Chair Ted Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Aguilar. At the end of next week, Congress is scheduled to adjourn for a holiday recess. When we come back in January, we're going to be facing a government shutdown. So what are Republicans doing this week about that? Nothing. No appropriations bill scheduled for this week. No evidence that they're scheduling any appropriations bills for next week. Republicans seem to have just largely given up on passing appropriations bills, and then we're going to face a government shutdown. What do they focus on instead? Impeachment with no evidence. The White House has provided over 35,000 pages of financial documents, over 2,000 pages of Treasury reports, 36 hours of testimony, and Republicans still cannot point to a single policy decision or action that Joe Biden has taken that has violated any law. And don't just trust me, just hear what they themselves have said. Republican Representative Mike McCall admitted, quote, "We don't have the evidence," end quote. Speaker Johnson reportedly told his own colleagues, quote, "There was insufficient evidence to initiate formal impeachment proceedings," end quote. And Republican Representative Dusty Johnson said, quote, "There is a constitutional legal test that you have to meet with evidence," end quote. And when it comes to impeachment, he has, quote, "not seen that evidence," end quote. Democrats are focused on people over politics, and we ask Republicans to do the same and help move the American family forward instead of baseless impeachment proceedings.
Questions? Nick?
The supplemental in the Senate looks like it's in some trouble this week. Was it a mistake to have put immigration and border policy on the table in the first place, since that seems to be the major hangup on this?
I don't think that was a decision that House Democrats made. I think we have been ready and willing to vote on a national security supplemental. And I think many Senate Democrats and even some Senate Republicans have been willing to engage on the national security supplemental from the beginning. Some of Leader McConnell's first statements on this were in support of Ukraine and that top line a number that the president sent over. So I guess the question is, where are they now? Where are where is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee? Where is the Armed Services chairman in the House? And why aren't they supportive of giving Ukraine the vital funding that they need to stop Putin from marching through Europe? House Democrats would be willing to vote on a clean Ukraine funding as well as a national security supplemental. But it seems that Senate Republicans seem more focused on making and maybe following Speaker Johnson's lead in making this political. Speaker Johnson made this incredibly political with Israel funding. It was not a serious effort to supply funding to our trusted ally in Israel. We saw him and House Republicans play politics with that, and now we see Senate Republicans following that lead. Vice Chair. Other questions, Eric?
A question on the shutdown appropriations. There is some chatter from Republicans that you guys may be hearing a top line deal. Are you having any sense that you might get a top line number now that the Freedom Caucus has moved a little bit towards the center on that?
I'll defer to Ranking Member DeLauro on the latest updates for that, and Leader Jeffries. But this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. I mean, we have a top line number. It is law. It was the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was negotiated when Democrats came to the table and put up the votes to avoid a catastrophic default that would have crushed our economy. Democrats delivered those votes just like they delivered the votes on the continuing resolution in September to avoid hurting our economy. And Democrats continue to deliver the votes to help our economy. And unfortunately, it's Republicans who don't see that. And you have Senate Republicans, Senate Democrats, House Democrats, and President Biden all supporting current law and the Fiscal Responsibility Act. It's just Speaker Johnson and the extreme MAGA Republicans in the House Republican Conference who don't quite know what their position is. They oppose it. They want 1.4. They want 1.57 without some of the side discussions and agreements. So we just don't quite know where they are. Chad?
Thank you. Good morning. You talked about them focusing on impeachment rather than appropriation bills here. Obviously, you guys must think that there is some, and do you think that there is some political advantage to Democrats if they're going to go off on this tangent here with the impeachment when they're not addressing funding the government or the supplemental? How do you use that politically against them if you think that that's a bad idea for them to go down that route?
We're not concerned about the politics of this. We're concerned about governing. There's going to be plenty of time for politics, but this is a serious time for serious work. We've got to fund government. We need to help Ukraine. We need to support our colleagues in Israel. There's a lot to do. What we can do, Chad, is highlight exactly what is going on. And we think by doing that, it will be very clear that this Republican so-called majority is more focused on, censures and impeachments and chaos and extremism than they are about actually governing. We think that'll be clear, and we think that will be the lasting legacy of this Republican conference.
Sure. When Democrats are in control, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act to reduce costs, particularly in the area of prescription drugs. We also passed an infrastructure law to ease supply chain bottlenecks to help lower costs. Right now, we're focused on creating jobs and also on fighting back against price gouging. At the same time, what we see with Republicans is they're focused on impeachment. We're simply highlighting that and presenting the contrast, and the American people can decide which party is taking their concerns and trying to help the American family.
He knows a little what he's talking about as a impeachment manager for the second impeachment that was bipartisan in support. Heather?
I do. On impeachment, I know how you both feel, but if they do open this inquiry with a vote next week, should the administration then be more compliant with the subpoenas? Because that was the issue that you had with them and the Trump administration.
Well, I think what we're interested in is ensuring that there's a fair and legal process. I'll leave that up to the White House counsel to give advice to the president and the executive branch. I'm not a real attorney. Vice Chair Lieu is, and I'll let him speak. But I think what we're concerned about, and what Democrats have said time and time again, is let's use this standard. Then this was a standard that was previously. Took a vote in the House in order to go to the next step. We appreciate the administration being so forthcoming and providing documents, thousands of documents, and over to the House majority. But if this is what they wanted to vote their time on without any proof or evidence, that's then they're free to do that.
I'm a recovering attorney, but even I know that you need evidence to go forward with an impeachment inquiry. unlike with President Trump, he incited an insurrection. There was video of it. There was audio of it. There were 140 police officers injured. There was damage to the Capitol. Here, there's just no evidence. There's no transcript, no video, no evidence of any wrongdoing by President Biden. And Republicans can't even explain what action he took or what policy decision Joe Biden made that somehow broke any law. And I think your question is not quite correct. The White House has been extremely compliant, providing over 35,000 pages of financial records, 2,000 Treasury reports, 36 hours of testimony, and Republicans still have not found a single shred of evidence to implicate Joe Biden in any wrongdoing.
You guys have this briefing later today that Leader Jeffrey's call on safety for members in Washington, D.C. You've obviously had a few incidents with members of your caucus this year. Do you guys need to see something from the D.C. government as far as cracking down on crime over the next few months? Obviously, you opposed the effort from Republicans to try to step in earlier this year when it comes to crime in D.C. Is there any concern there in what the D.C. government's doing?
Two separate issues. We obviously have a role to play here in Congress, but we also kind of balance that with the respect of home rule and DC's ability to make decisions within the constructs of this governmental relationship that we have, where they receive funding and support from DC, from Congress. What you're talking about is member security balanced with First Amendment rights and rights of freedom of expression. But I want to be clear that we are taking this incredibly seriously. This is a House Democratic, family discussion later this afternoon. I'm not going to get into those details. We hope that that Capitol Police will provide ideas, resources, best practices, and tips that members can utilize. It is completely fair for individuals to protest our district offices, to write letters, make their viewpoints heard. I do not personally feel it's appropriate for personal residences to be protested. I think that crosses the line. Reaching out to family members and protesting personal residences, I think is a dangerous precedent, and I hope it stops. Lisa.
Obviously, a lot going on Ukraine and the border. I want to ask you what you think of the asylum and parole systems, because Republicans are making that sort of the centerpiece of their objections to Ukraine, and they're saying they think the asylum system in particular, but also parole, essentially open doors to almost unregulated immigration. Do you think there need to be changes in those systems? Obviously, we know where Republicans want to go is not where you want to go, but what do you think of the system in general?
I think these are all, very fair conversations, and within the construct of comprehensive immigration reform, these should be natural opportunities for us to debate and discuss and have back and forth and some give and take, because clearly there is a worldwide discussion about migration. That is happening. We've seen this in parts of Europe. We've seen this throughout Latin America, Central America as well. This is not unique to our portion of the world in our hemisphere. And we want to make sure that people understand that there is a role, there should be a role for the world to discuss and give us ideas on this as well moving forward. But we view this as something that is a smaller piece of a bigger discussion about immigration reform, and that you need to have those discussions. You need to talk about ensuring that individuals with DACA status, have a path to citizenship. We have a bipartisan bill that we passed to do just that, Farm Worker Modernization Act, to make sure that our agriculture industry continues to thrive and do well and lead the world. We need the workers to do that work. And so that's going to be a part of the discussion, again, in a bipartisan way. We've seen bipartisan groups advocate for increased visa numbers, for high-skilled, visas. That should be part of the discussion as well. How we embrace and honor our heritage of being a country that is welcoming to immigrants. Vice Chair Lieu's relatives and mine coming to this country to create a life for their families. We need to be able to live up to that and to lift that up. That doesn't mean that we feel that it's perfect. We feel that there's room for improvement, and we want to be part of that discussion. But this can't happen in a silo, and this can't happen in exchange of do all of this, and we'll unlock a national security priority. That's not how this discussion should progress, and it's unfortunate that that's where Senate Republicans have taken this.
The Ukrainians are fighting for their lives. They're fighting to make sure their country still exists. Is there any evidence that Putin is going to stop if he overruns Ukraine? No. Putin didn't stop after he invaded Georgia. He didn't stop after he invaded Crimea. And to put this incredibly important national security priority for the United States and for Ukraine and to link it to asylum makes no sense. There's literally nothing that is the same between these two issues. And a Republican saying somehow we're getting too many Ukrainian refugees and that's why we have to fix asylum. No, these are completely unrelated issues. And as Chairman Aguilar said, we're happy to work on comprehensive immigration reform, but to link completely unrelated issues when Ukraine is fighting for its survival is a shameful act by the Republicans.
Michael?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The national security supplemental seems to be languishing in the Senate, but the White House has also put forward a domestic supplemental request that has some child care funding requests, broadband. How concerned are House Democrats that those issues are being sidelined that matter to the American people while the national security supplemental takes up all the oxygen in Congress?
Well, we hope that there's a conversation for both of those. And I appreciate you bringing that up because back home in our districts, we hear often about the child care cliff, about the rising costs that families pay. And those are issues that are important to our communities, and those are things that we feel deserve the attention and to be part of this discussion. You're right, a lot of the DC energy has been about the national security side, but we hope that the domestic side also receives due consideration and support. Thank you.
Thank you.